Okay, so right now we're going to start learning about arrays. We've already talked about variables and data types, and so now we're going to start talking about arrays, and I'll kind of explain what that is in a minute. So our learning goals for this section is to understand what an array is and why they're useful, and then we're going to create some arrays and access the data that's stored in them. So our technical vocabulary today, the first thing is an array, and we're going to have a whole slide on what that is in a moment, but it's essentially just like a list of things, like a grocery list or a list of students, scholars that are in this room, things like that. An element is one of those things stored in the array. So if I had a list of the scholars in the room, my name, Tia, could be one of those elements. An index is the number that's assigned to an element. So because arrays are ordered lists, which again we'll get into in a second, but because arrays are ordered lists, the index is how we can tell where each thing is in the array. And then initialize is the word we use to say we're starting a new array. We're going to essentially like declare a variable. We're going to declare that the array exists, and that's called initialize. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about what an array is in a second. An array is an ordered collection that stores multiple values of the same type. So it's very important that you know it's ordered. That's why those indices are so important. And it stores multiple values of the same type. If you've worked in other languages, you might know that arrays can hold different data types, like it could hold a string and an integer, but in Swift, it's only allowed to hold one data type. So if it's going to hold a string, then every element in the array has to be a string. And the arrays can hold any type of element as long as it's the same type of element. So it can hold an integer, a string, and can even hold another array or a list of other arrays. And we separate them, once they're in the array, we separate them using commas. So now that we know a little bit about arrays, we want to talk about how to create them. So we can initialize or start an array in two different ways. We can start them empty and just say, here's this name of an array that I'm going to use later, but I don't want to put anything in it just yet. I just want the name to be declared. Or we can start them with data already in them. So if I'm going to create an empty array, here's the syntax. I'm going to say the var for variable. I'm going to name it, and remember we name variables with that lowercase first letter. So array of strings, we put the equal sign and then brackets, and then we declare the type of data that's going to go inside it, inside those brackets. And then we put the two parentheses after, open and close parentheses after. If we wanted an array of integers, it'd be the same thing. The data type that would go inside those brackets would be the keyword int for integer. So if I want to create it with data instead of empty, then I'm going to actually type in the string or the integer list that I'm going to have in that array. So again, we declare the variable var, lowercase f, friends of Carly, equals, and then a bracket. And these are Carly's friends, right? So I'm going to type in the names of the friends with quotes around them, because remember, strings do need quotes. And then when I call that array back later on, if I call friends of Carly, this is what the code will access. It'll access this list. So remember, that's not going to print it. That's just going to tell the code to look in that array. And that gray text is not, like I said, it's not printing that. It's just calling that back up. And that's just to show you that that's what that code would do. So in real life, can you think about Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and think when those applications might use arrays? We're going to have you write a list and then compare notes with the person sitting next to you. During this time, I'd walk around, see what people have written. If anyone's stuck, I would be happy to help them come up with some, give them some of my ideas, things like that. And then we'd have them share out what they came up with. I remember last year, a lot of scholars said like the list of people who liked your photo could be an array. Trying to think of some others. That was one I remember vividly. So applications like Instagram, probably utilize arrays a lot. A lot of you have come up with these things. So each user has a list of followers and people that they follow. Those could be arrays. Each user has a list of photos stored. Those could be arrays. Or each user has a list of people who liked each photo, which I remember specifically someone saying. So it's not enough to just have that list in there, right? We might want to actually access some of the data we've put in that array or call it back to our code. So in this list, Friends of Carly, Michelle Obama is that first element, right? That has an index of 0. All of the indexes, the list of things in the array are numbered starting at 0 and then counting up from there. So the first thing is going to have an index of 0. The second thing is going to have an index of 1. The third thing is going to have an index of 2. So that's what this slide is showing you. Just Michelle Obama has an index of 0. Serena Williams, that second thing, has an index of 1. And that kind of trips people up. But if you ever notice that you're using the correct syntax and you're calling the correct thing that you want to call, you're typing the code correctly, but it's pulling out a different element than you expected it to pull, just check to make sure you're using the right index. Accessing information continued. So if I want to just pull one of those things, I can type the name of my array. So in this case, Friends of Carly. And then if I want to pull out Taylor Swift or T Swift, I'm going to put a 2 in the brackets. That's telling me that I'm going to pull out the third element in my array. Friends of Carly 0 would pull out the first element in the array. So now you're going to try this on your own. You're going to create an array of at least 4 strings and store it in a variable that describes the data that those strings hold. So for example, if I wanted to store an array of my grocery list, I would probably call the variable grocery list and then put the things that I would go to the grocery store and buy, like eggs, milk, sugar, bread. I'd put those things in the array. And then once you have that array initialized, we want you to print the first element, print the last element, and then print the second element using those indices. So at this point, they would already have known by the time we got to this lesson, but I would have them put a sticky note on their computer if they get stuck. That way we know like who to hit as we walk around. It's really easy and they can continue working. They don't have to hold their hand in the air to wait for us. And I would walk around and just check to make sure everyone's doing it right. If they are missing anything, say, give them ideas of how they could fix whatever's broken, things like that. So now that we've talked about creating arrays and calling elements from them using those indices, we can also update the information. So say, Carly has these 4 friends, but all of a sudden she's not friends with Taylor Swift anymore. They get into a fight. She wants to remove Taylor Swift from her list of friends. She can update that list without having to go back in the code and find where she declared the variable and retype it. She can later on in her code just update the array that she had previously made. So the syntax for that, she's going to type in the name of the array, the name of the variable, and the bracket, she's going to put an open bracket and the number, the index of whoever she wants to change out. So for this one, Taylor Swift was index 2 because she's the third thing in the array. Remember, those indices are, a 1 off because it starts at 0. And then she's going to say that element in the array, I want to say Josh Kushner. So it's going to take out T Swift and put in Josh Kushner. And you see in that gray text, that's what will come up now if you printed the array. We can also add information. So say, Taylor Swift and her didn't get into this huge fight. It's just that we have a new person we want to add. We made a new friend. Then we can do something a little bit different. So this time it'll be Friends of Carly .append, which means to add. And we're going to put in parentheses and in quotes, because it's a string, Josh Kushner. So now the list is, instead of 4 people, it's 5 people, indices 0 through 4. And Josh Kushner, you see in that gray text, is right there at the end. And if we can add stuff, what do you think we can do too? We can also remove stuff. So we have this variable, Friends of Carly, again, the same list. And instead of append, instead of .append, this time we're going to have dot remove. And we don't need to know what person is at that index. We can just, so we don't have to type the string, we can just put the index. So it's going to be dot remove parentheses at colon and then whatever index you want to remove. So friends of Carly dot remove parentheses at index 0. And so now Michelle Obama has been removed from friends of Carly. And now each person has a new index, right? Because we removed index 0, Serena Williams is now at the 0 index. So don't get confused and think that, oh, now it starts at index 1. No, it still starts at index 0. It's just whoever was at that index 0 before is now not in there anymore. So we're going to try it again. Using the same array that you created during the last try it exercise that we did, we want you to practice accessing the specific elements. So printing out a specific person in that list or whatever type of list you created. Add 2 new elements and use a print statement to verify that they've been added. Use code to change one of the elements. So that would be that writing the name and then a bracket, the index, and then setting it equal to whatever you want to change it to, and then use code to remove the person from the array. So that's that dot remove. We have the dot append, we have the bracket with the index, and then setting it equal to the new thing that we want it to change to, and we have the dot remove. Go ahead and try that now. We'll walk around and answer any questions you may have. And again, the same process would apply. They'd put those sticky notes on their paper if they get stuck. This one will probably take a little bit longer than the last one did. Okay, so everyone did a really great job with that last try it. So now we're gonna kind of set you free and let you practice on your own. We want you to declare a variable called hobbies that stores an array of your top 5 favorite accounts to follow on social media in strings. So we're gonna have to use those quotes around whatever we type. And then during this practice, we want you to change the value of at least 1 element, add a new account to the array, remove the last account from the array, and then print the value of the third element in the array and change the value of another element. So you have kind of a few things to do here. If you happen to finish early, there are 2 extension activities you can try. There's a challenge and then there's a true extension. So if you get stuck, just go ahead and look at the PowerPoint that's been shared with you and you can kind of continue on. That way you're not just sitting there not doing anything. And if you get stuck or if you didn't get a chance to finish either of those 2 try-its, go ahead and try to fix those now before you get into the practice. So like I said, we'll be walking around to answer any questions you have, but this is really your independent work time.